avalanche. A slide crushing the tent causes the team to panic and rush out into the frigid night unprepared. Well, the tent wasn't buried in snow, and there's no evidence of a large debris field that would come from an avalanche. Also, there has never been an avalanche recorded on that slope. Animal attacks. There are no external wounds, prints, or typical attack patterns evident. I'm sure some of the post-mortem injuries are likely caused by scavengers, but not the major injuries. And the Mansi people called that mountain Death Mountain because there are no animals up there. Attacked by tribespeople theory. Some have theorized that local tribal groups like the Mansi might have ambushed the hikers, seeing their presence on the peaks as disrespectful. But the Mansi generally avoided contact with outsiders rather than attacking them. And there are several footprints in the snow showing a calm and orderly evacuation of the tent, not a frenzied defense from attacking forces. Plus, you'd think a human ambush would leave more obvious traumatic wounds instead of the creepy, bloodless precision stuff we see here. With no history of violence against strangers and no tangible indications of a tribal attack, it's pretty unlikely that the Mansi went on some random rampage. Secret weapons testing theory. Some theorists think that the Soviet military could have been running secret operations in the remote Urals that went haywire and killed the hikers. Maybe testing some experimental ray gun or sound weapon that accidentally amplified to lethal levels. Could explain the freakish internal damage at least. But no records show the USSR conducting any classified tests in that area back then. And while there is radiation detected on a few articles of clothing, the radiation levels on the bodies checks out normal too, ruling out exposure from a nuclear mishap. You'd think if the government was responsible, they'd cover it up by any means necessary, not do a sloppy investigation leaving weird clues. While it's possible that the KGB still hides details, nothing directly points to a deadly military accident in the mountains that night. Katabatic winds theory. Some researchers propose fierce katabatic winds, which are winds of high-density air that get pulled down the side of a mountain due to gravity, that these winds may have swooped down the slope that night, frightening the group into fleeing their tents. These powerful gusts can reach hurricane speeds and could have damaged the tent and whipped up a frenzy. Additionally, infrasound waves at frequencies below human hearing can induce panic and hallucinations. The alleged windstorm may have generated these disturbing subaudible vibrations. Together, the deafening wind and disorienting infrasound could have sparked irrational terror, luring the hikers out improperly dressed until they succumbed to hypothermia. However, some point out that winds typically leave visible damage, which was missing at the campsite, and infrasound alone cannot account for the catastrophic injuries found in some of the hikers. Could both katabatic gusts and infrasound have contributed to the confusion and poor decisions that doomed the group that night? Sure, but those forces certainly don't cover every base. Yeti attack theory. Now, given the remote location, I'd be remiss not to address the legends of the Yeti possibly lurking in those mountains. Some have proposed it was one of these elusive creatures that savaged the hikers. And it is true that sightings have persisted in the area over the years, enough that we can't completely rule out some giant primate roaming the Ural snows. Many believers have pointed to this photograph as evidence of the creature in the area. I, for one, believe this photo is just a blurry image of one of the hikers dressed for the cold. But if the rumors of such a creature are true, it certainly would have the horrendous force necessary to inflict the rib and skull fractures seen on some of the bodies. But just like the animal attack theory, where are the signs of a struggle? UFO encounter theory. There are documented reports of orange orbs floating in the sky in a town just 50 miles from where the hikers were. And some injuries, like Ludmila missing her eyes and her tongue, sure are reminiscent of injuries incurred in animal mutilation cases reported around the world. But what would make them leave their tent? If they're in the tent, they wouldn't see any UFOs or even orange orbs floating around in the sky. Something would have had to come to them and make them leave the tent. But again, no other footprints of any kind are found anywhere in the area. Psychic or paranormal phenomena. There has been some speculation that some kind of psychic paranormal force was responsible, like maybe a malevolent spirit or vortex of dark energy descended on the campsite, triggering irrational panic and luring them to their gruesome fates. At this point, I guess anything is possible. It would explain why they fled so frantically without a clear threat and the lack of measurable physical evidence at the scene. But without hard scientific proof or any evidence of any kind, this one's just wild speculation. Now here we come to the latest and greatest theory that might just be the best candidate of them all, the slab avalanche theory. Alexander Puzrin of the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Zurich, who has studied slab avalanches, and Johann Gaum of the Snow Avalanche Simulation Laboratory at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology in Lausanne used computer models to recreate the event. By using the animation code from the movie Frozen, they modeled the movement of the snow given the conditions present on the mountain that night. First, the hikers cut into the snow to level an area for the tent, and the resulting vertical wall helps to shield the tent from the wind, common practice at that time. But according to this theory, the hikers do not realize that under the top layer of snow is a layer of sugary snow that can move with much less friction than other types of snow. Then the katabatic winds come into play. The winds are coming down the side of the mountain and likely bringing all of the snow from the top of the mountain down to the bottom and depositing at least some of it right above the tent, increasing the weight on that top layer of snow. At some critical mass point, the weight of the top layer gets to be too much and the sugar snow gives way, sending that top layer off the edge and onto the tent. And since it's only the top layer of snow that comes down, you don't see the large debris field associated with a normal avalanche. Crash test data from General Motors is then used to simulate an avalanche's impact on humans. The researchers show that a block of snow no bigger than an SUV can cause the resulting injuries when it rams into the tent. The victims with chest and head injuries survive for a time before succumbing to their wounds, which coincides with what the computer models revealed. Pretty good theory. It's definitely plausible and covers a lot of the bases. But I'm still not convinced. Rib fractures? Sure. They're probably sleeping on their sides. Nikolai's skull fractures? That I don't know about. The skull fracture pattern looks like more of a localized hit than the wider spread pressure of heavy snow. But okay, let's go with that. Then it stands to reason that once the snow hits, they cut themselves out of the tent with the uninjured ones carrying the injured. But if they're all lined up in the same tent, why don't they all suffer from these catastrophic injuries? And not all experts agree that there were katabatic winds on the mountain that night. I don't know. It certainly comes the closest, but I don't think it covers everything. So, 60 years later, what do we make of this whole mess? Well, here's the frustrating truth. No single explanation, normal or paranormal, perfectly fits all the crazy facts. Even with new theories, the story endures over the decades as one of Russia's most iconic unsolved mysteries. That perfect mix of creepy discoveries, macabre clues, and utter bafflement at the end. I mean, just look at the cultural ripples. books, movies, podcasts, and more, dissecting the puzzle from every angle. Tourists and amateur web sleuths flock to the past trying to find something, anything, the tiniest unfound clue that could bring light to this craziness. True crime junkies and paranormal enthusiasts can't get enough. It's totally part of the modern folklore now. 60 years later, the mystery of the Dyatlov Pass incident draws us still with the memorials that beg the living never to forget the dead.